Now, speaking of human rights violations, the next topic that I want to get into is the current genocide that's going on in Yemen. So the country of Yemen has been the site of a proxy war for the past 5 years between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Millions of people have been displaced from their homes. If I'm not mistaken, 3.3 million people have been displaced from their homes. Over 10,000 people by this point have been murdered. What's going on in Yemen, it's the textbook definition of a humanitarian crisis. And it is true that not enough people are talking about it, and not enough people are talking about Canada's complicity in providing weapons, America's complicity in providing weapons. It's truly disgusting. And also, of course, the pandemic we're going through right now, that has clearly exacerbated this humanitarian crisis that's going on in Yemen. It's important to note that as a result of this genocide that's going on in Yemen, that's largely been because of Saudi-led coalitions. They have largely been the ones that have caused most of the destruction. The majority of civilians that are dying because of Saudi bombs. They're bombing hospitals, open air markets, you name it. And because of this war, their healthcare system has been compromised. And now that there's a pandemic, many people aren't even able to get testing. Their COVID death rate is 25%. And there are only 5 COVID testing sites throughout the country. And only people who are experiencing the very severe symptoms that we associate with COVID-19 are actually able to be tested in these testing centers. So I say all this to say that this country the people are just being attacked from many different facets. There have been quarantine measures set up at seaports, right? And because of these quarantine measures, there's just a reduction in humanitarian cargo that's going into the country. About 2/3 of humanitarian cargo has stopped entering the country, if I'm not mistaken. And as a result of these quarantine policies, there's been a shortage of PPE and other medical equipment. And also, healthcare workers in this country, they haven't been paid in 5 years, and medical equipment in healthcare facilities is obsolete. It's heartbreaking, guys, because it's also mainly women and children that are facing the brunt of this war that's going on in Yemen. And it's very hard for non-governmental organizations to even have boots on the ground to help them, because again, also their lives are at risk too because of the bombs that are going off. The place is literally a minefield. And also just because of the terrain of Yemen, it's like a mountainous area. So it's hard for people to even deliver aid to the children and the women that need it. Also, we have to mention the fact that they have one of the highest maternal death rates in the world. Many women have died due to complications from birth. And of course, because of the pandemic, that's going to exacerbate that situation even more. Of course, many hospitals aren't even able to accept patients. We're seeing many young people joined armed militias because now no one has the money to afford to pay for university. So we're seeing these young people joining these militias, and they're losing their lives. They're taking other people's lives. Yeah, jobs are scarce. The prices are very high. And joining an armed group is the only way for people to make a living. And recently, Saudi Arabia, they came out and were saying that they were proposing a framework to end the latest battle in the southern part of the country. And the current struggle that's going on right now in southern Yemen is between the Southern Transition Council and the other Saudi-backed allies in this. The Saudis are proposing a framework because they're trying to end the latest battle in South Yemen, right? And the battle is being had between nominal allies that's under a Saudi-led coalition. And this is in the backdrop of violence escalating in the north. And the north is controlled largely by the Houthi rebels, or the Houthi movement rather. It's important to note that the Houthi movement they're like the militia. They represent like the Shia minority Muslims in Yemen. And they have fought a series of rebellions in the past decade against the former president of Yemen, named President Ali Abdullah Saleh. And they have taken advantage of the new president of Yemen, whose name is Abdrabbuh Mansour Hadi. That's the current president. They've taken advantage of his weaknesses by taking control of the northern parts of the country. I want to bring back Canada's involvement. It's important to note that Canada has endorsed the UN Secretary General's call for a ceasefire in Yemen, But again, as I mentioned, they're currently still supplying Yemen with weapons. You know what, man? It's really time for our government to follow the lead of other countries like Germany, Austria, and Finland, and I believe Denmark, just to name a few. It's time for them to really follow their lead and to stop the sale of these weapons. And I don't even want to hear anything about jobs. No, I think I've heard people in class say this argument. Oh, but why would they stop the deal though? But what about the jobs of those people who are working to make those weapons in London, Ontario? I think that's a completely bullshit argument. Just because the way it works right now, people happen to benefit off of this system doesn't make it immoral, and doesn't mean that it has to be like this. We can find other ways for people to work. Why does it have to necessarily be at the expense of innocent lives? I think it's truly inhumane, and if you want to justify a genocide on the grounds of economic reasons and people having jobs, then I think that you're completely lost, and you need to really re-examine this whole case, because your moral compass is warped, in my opinion. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about this. Again, thank you for watching. If you like what you see here and you want to see more, make sure to hit that like button, click on the subscribe button, and click on the bell so you never miss a notification. Until next time, y'all.